Can you believe my own son, my flesh and blood, stood there and called me selfish? And his wife. Oh, she truly outdid herself that night, throwing an entire glass of red wine at me right in my own home. I was absolutely drenched, stunned, and frankly heartbroken. Was I wrong for what I did next, for immediately pulling out my phone and texting my lawyer? Tell me, would any of you have done differently in my shoes? Because I'm still reeling from it all, trying to make sense of how my life, my retirement, and my relationship with my son spiraled so completely out of control. It all started subtly, years ago, after my husband, Mark, passed away. Mark and I had built a good life for ourselves. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had a beautiful 4-bedroom house, fully paid off in a quiet, desirable neighborhood. We'd raised our 2 children there, my son, David, and my daughter, Sarah. David was the older one, always a bit more ambitious, a bit more driven. Sarah was more artistic, more free-spirited. When Mark died, it left a huge void, not just in my heart, but in the practical day-to-day of my life. I was suddenly alone in this big house, with a decent pension and some savings, but also with the loneliness that comes after decades of companionship. David and his wife, Emily, had always been a bit tight with money. They had 2 kids, my grandchildren, whom I adore, but they struggled to make ends meet in their tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Emily, bless her heart, always had an eye for bigger and better things. And David, well, he usually went along with whatever Emily wanted. Sarah, on the other hand, was happy in her own small studio, pursuing her art, never asking for anything. The first hint of trouble came about a year after Mark's passing. David and Emily invited me over for dinner, which was a rare treat. Emily cooked, and it was actually quite nice. Over dessert, David started talking about their apartment. "Mom," he began, "it's just getting too small for us. The kids are growing, and we need more space. Rent here is insane, and buying anything decent is just out of our league." I nodded sympathetically. I knew the market was tough. Then Emily chimed in, "And your house, Mary, it's so big for just one person. All those empty rooms." I remember a chill running down my spine. I tried to brush it off. "Oh, I like having the space, dear. It reminds me of all the wonderful years Mark and I had here." But they didn't drop it. They started hinting, subtly at first, then more overtly, about how it would make so much sense if they moved in with me. They could help with expenses, they'd be there for me, the grandchildren would be around. It sounded appealing on the surface, a way to combat the loneliness. But deep down, I loved my independence. This house was my sanctuary. I politely declined, saying I wasn't ready for such a big change. David looked disappointed, and Emily's smile tightened. Over the next few months, their suggestions became more insistent. Every visit, every phone call, it was the same song and dance. "Are you sure you wouldn't be happier with us here, Mom? Think of the grandkids, Grandma." Emily even started bringing up how much money they could save, how they could finally start building equity. It began to feel less like concern for me and more like a strategy session. I started dreading their calls. Then the health scare happened. It was a minor incident, a dizzy spell that landed me in the hospital for a night of observation. Nothing serious, just a reminder that I wasn't as young as I used to be. David and Emily were there, naturally, and they seized the opportunity. "See, Mom, you need someone around. What if something serious had happened? We could be right here to help." They laid on the guilt thick, talking about their duty as children, about my declining health, about the safety net they could provide. Against my better judgment, and swayed by the thought of being alone, If something truly serious happened, I relented. I told them they could move in, but with strict conditions. They would pay a reasonable amount towards utilities and groceries, they would respect my space, and it would be a temporary arrangement until they saved enough for their own place. They agreed, profusely grateful, promising to be the most helpful tenants a mother could ask for. Oh, how naive I was. The first few weeks were okay, even pleasant. The house felt livelier with the children, and Emily did help with some chores, and David with some of the heavier lifting around the house. But the temporary arrangement quickly started to feel permanent. Their reasonable contribution towards expenses dwindled to nothing within a couple of months. When I brought it up, David would say, "Mom, you know how tight things are right now. We'll catch up, I promise." Emily would add, "Besides, we're doing so much around the house for you, aren't we? That's worth something." Gradually, they began to take over. My living room became the kids' playroom. My quiet evenings were replaced by the constant noise of a busy family. My kitchen, once my sanctuary, became Emily's domain, and she often left it a mess for me to clean. My once carefully curated garden was trampled by kids' toys. I felt like a guest in my own home. I tried to talk to David gently about my concerns. He'd just brush me off, saying, "Mom, you're being difficult. We're family, we're helping you. You should be grateful." The real turning point came when they started talking about renovations. Emily decided the house needed modernizing. She wanted to knock down walls, remodel the kitchen and bathrooms, and redecorate everything. I was horrified. This was my asterisk home, filled with memories of Mark and our life together. I loved it the way it was. When I said no, a full-blown argument erupted. Emily exploded, "You're living in the past, Mary. This house is outdated. We need to make it suitable for a growing family. If you cared about your grandchildren, you'd want them to have a beautiful home." David, predictably, sided with Emily, telling me I was being unreasonable. I put my foot down. This is my house, and I decide what happens to it. There will be no major renovations. That night, the atmosphere was thick with resentment. Emily barely spoke to me, and David was cold and distant. I knew then that I had made a terrible mistake letting them move in. I needed them out. So that's the situation I was in, trapped in my own home with my son and his increasingly hostile wife, watching my cherished memories be slowly eroded, feeling utterly helpless. I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted them directly, tried to work things out, or something else entirely? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts, because I felt like I was at the end of my rope. I tried to be diplomatic first. I sat David down and told him, as calmly as I could, that the arrangement wasn't working. I explained that I needed my space back, and that they needed to find their own place. He reacted with shock, then anger. "Mom, what are you talking about? We're a family. You can't just kick us out. Where are we supposed to go?" Emily, overhearing, burst into the room, her face contorted with fury. "Kick us out? After all we've done for you? After we moved into help you? You're ungrateful." The argument escalated quickly. I reminded them of our initial agreement, that it was temporary, that they weren't contributing as promised, and that they were disrespecting my home. That's when David delivered the stinging blow. "You're being selfish, Mom. All you care about is yourself. We're your family, and you're abandoning us." That word, selfish, cut me to the core. Me, selfish, after everything I'd done for him, for both my children, throughout their lives. I stood there, speechless for a moment, the accusation ringing in my ears. Emily then grabbed a glass of red wine from the coffee table. Before I could even react, she hurled it at me. The dark, sticky liquid splashed across my chest, down my arms, staining my favorite cream colored cardigan and the carpet beneath. I gasped, not just from the cold shock of the wine, but from the sheer audacity, the blatant disrespect. My son just stood there, watching, doing nothing. In that moment, something snapped inside me. The years of trying to be understanding, of making allowances, of putting their needs before my own, evaporated. I looked at the dark stain on my clothes, then at Emily's triumphant sneer, and David's blank, unhelpful expression. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and with trembling fingers, I texted my lawyer, "I need to evict my son and his wife. ASAP." The silence that followed my action was deafening. Emily's triumphant look faltered, replaced by a flicker of fear. David's eyes widened. "Mom, what are you doing?" he stammered. "What do you mean, evict?" I didn't respond directly. I just repeated my message to the lawyer, loud enough for them to hear, confirming I wanted to proceed with legal eviction. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, uncomfortable conversations, and escalating tension in the house. My lawyer was fantastic. He explained my rights, and because they weren't paying rent and had no formal lease, it was a relatively straightforward process, though emotionally draining. David and Emily tried every trick in the book. They appealed to my emotions, tried to rally Sarah against me, who, bless her, firmly sided with me, and even threatened to make my life a living hell. Emily spread rumors among our mutual acquaintances about how heartless I was, how I was abandoning my own son. But I held firm. That stain on my cardigan, the word selfish, ringing in my ears, and my son's passive indifference as his wife assaulted me in my own home, had solidified my resolve. Eventually, the legal notice came, giving them a firm deadline to vacate. They finally realized I was serious. The last few days were filled with sullen packing and pointed glares. On the day they left, David tried one last time to appeal to me, "Mom, please don't do this, we're family." But I just looked at him, at the person he had become, at the man who had called me selfish, and watched his wife throw wine at me without a word. I simply said, "You chose your path, David. I chose mine." They moved out, taking their noise, their messes, and their disrespect with them. The silence in the house after they left was deafening, but it was a welcome, peaceful silence. It took me weeks to truly clean and reclaim my home, to scrub away the lingering traces of their presence, and to mentally recover from the emotional ordeal. My relationship with David is fractured, perhaps irrevocably. He still believes I was selfish, that I should have sacrificed my home and my peace for his family. Emily, predictably, still holds a grudge. Sarah, however, visits often, and together we've started re-establishing the warmth and comfort this home once held. It's been a hard lesson, a painful one, but I learned that sometimes protecting yourself, your peace, and your boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. I lost a part of my son, but I regained myself and my home. This whole experience taught me that standing firm for what's right, even against those you love, is sometimes the only way to truly live. So, I hope my story gives some of you strength, if you're ever in a similar situation. Like this video if you were on my side. If you think I did the right thing by taking back control of my life and my home. Please subscribe for more stories like this, where I share my experiences and ask for your thoughts. And don't forget to share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I truly want to know what you think. I'll see you all in the next story.